right, let's go ahead and get going. Hello and welcome to Composable Unveiled, Unlocking the Future of Commerce. I am Brian Lang, CRO and co-founder at Future Commerce. We have a great panel ahead for you, and I will get into some introductions in just a minute. But I am so excited to be here. Composable is a topic near and dear to my heart, and I can't wait to dive in with our panelists today and uncover more about what it's about. Just a quick agenda here to kind of get started. We are going to get into some introductions, as I mentioned. We're going to talk a little bit about what inspired this webinar and this digital event. Say goodbye to Build versus Buy, the white paper by Contentstack, Publicis Sapient, and Commerce Tools. And we'll talk a little bit about that. And then we'll actually get into the content of that white paper and talk about it in a little bit more detail with some of the experts that help put it together and whose wisdom is included in that white paper. So before we get started, let's go ahead and get into these introductions. As I mentioned, I am Brian Lang, co-founder and CRO of Future Commerce. I will be the host of today's event. We've got three incredible panelists from Contentstack, Commerce Tools, and Publicis Sapient. Let's kick things off. Prasitha, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself?
Of course, thanks, Brian. Hi there, I'm Prasitha. I'm the Global VP of Partnerships at Contentstack. So I manage the relationships with our technology partners, such as Commerce Tools, and also our solution partners like Publicis Sapient, who help our customers really get full value out of their composable investments.
Excited to have you. Thanks, Prasitha. Kelly, how about you?
Hi, I am Chief Strategy Officer at Commerce Tools. I was also CPO for 6 years, and I'm actually coming up on my 7th year anniversary. I'm also co-founder of the Mock Alliance, was founding president, chairman, and now John actually, and for continuity purposes, is chairman. So I'll pass it over to him.
Hey, thanks, Kelly. I'm John Pinella. I'm Group Vice President in charge of our commerce practice at Publicis Sapient. Been here over 20 years helping our clients make that jump from into more of a digital experience, do a digital transformation around their business. As Kelly said, I sit on the board of the Mock Alliance. I'm now the chairman of the Alliance, and look forward to the discussion today.
Congrats, John. Super excited to have you, the founder and chairman and current chairman of the Mock Alliance, both here. It's pretty exciting. And talk a little bit more about what the Mock Alliance is for those of you that are a little bit new to the world of composable and headless. This is going to be an important part of our journey. Before we jump into the full content, I just wanted to mention this webinar is inspired and based on a white paper called Say Goodbye to Build versus Buy. This is an important white paper as you grow and evolve your commerce experience. You need to read this white paper. It is co-authored by Publicis Sapient, Commerce Tools, and Contentstack. And as I mentioned, the three of our panelists today involved in that and have some great quotes and things to say in there. If you wouldn't mind, just go ahead and scan this QR code here you see on your screen and get into all the detail. Something definitely worth following up as a next step after you listen to this webinar. Go download and read the report in full, or you can go check out that link that is there at the bottom of the slide. Without further ado, let's just jump right in. So the first thing we're going to talk about is an introduction to composable commerce, because I think we don't want to assume that you understand exactly what it is. You might be new, and this webinar is not only if you're new. We're going to dive into some further depth, but just to get things kind of started, John, what is composable commerce, and how does it differ from traditional e-commerce solutions?
Yeah, I think it's a great question, Brian, and one I get all the time from my clients. You know, when you think about it, the industry, many folks have been on an e-commerce platform for quite a while now. Kelly, I think you posted something the other day. 8.2 years is I think was your number of the average time that it takes to move from one solution to another. So many folks are at that inflection point. They're on a legacy solution. It's a monolith. It's difficult to change. It's difficult to roll out new functionality. It's difficult to add new content. Yes, they have deep control over the functionality within it, but it's become a point where it's an inhibitor to their business instead of helping their business move forward. So the idea of composability is give you agility, to give you control, to give you the ability to substitute pieces in and out, and most importantly, to find the right places to differentiate. It's not right for every company to try to differentiate around a shopping cart or a product detail page. You need to be differentiating around your business and how your customers interact with you from that perspective. And what composability gives you is the ability to plug in a search engine, plug in a promotions engine, bring in the right content solution, the right experience, to be able to make sure you're differentiating, you're relating to your customers, and you're providing them the hyper personalized experience that they're expecting. So the big move, to your question, Brian, is the simplest way to say it is I was on a legacy, a proven platform, did everything I needed to do, but I want to be able to move forward to where I have more control, more agility, and be able to provide a more personalized experience for my customers.
Yeah, I love that. And it's so good. There's so much samey out there in commerce right now. If you took away the header, would you even know what the brand was? For
we've had commerce platforms for 30 years now, if you can believe that. I mean, it's literally been 30 years. So yeah, you're right.
It's wild. It's absolutely wild. That means that, if we've been doing them for 30 years, if you've been on one, for 8 years, you might have already had two in your experience. And John, you already hit on this a little bit, and I think this is an important point, and we definitely need to talk more about the why. So Prasita, why would you say that any organization should look to transform into a composable solution, and what are the advantages for those that do so?
Thanks, Brian. Well, I mean, John's already started to get into this topic, but if you think about it, traditional commerce technologies emerged during the 1990s in the e-commerce revolution, just to provide some kind of online purchasing capability for retailers. And these solutions were developed when we had just one channel to transact, so via our computers. But now e-commerce is an integral part of our day-to-day lives, and we have so many more ways to shop. So whether that's a games console, a kiosk, social media, online marketplaces, e-commerce is now everywhere and will total over 15 trillion globally by 2028. So these traditional solutions have now become very costly and burdensome to retailers, and they lack the ability to really evolve to growing consumer needs, the channels that they want to engage via, or the ways that they want to pay. A lot of companies may have postponed making those necessary changes to adapt, and they're now feeling a lot of pressure as newer competition is rising and disrupting traditional business models. In some research that we recently conducted, we found that more than 50% of retailers believe their current platforms can't support their business needs for over the next year. These traditional, with these traditional solutions, you selected the suite that best fit the majority of your needs. So what that ultimately means is you make some compromises along the way. But retailers now really need to ensure that the technology they have that can support them to meet their customers where they are and via the channels they want to engage and transact via. And this is what composable commerce really offers: the ability to take best of breed technologies and connect them together to deliver the solution that suits your particular business. By purchasing the technology rather than bespoking it, you can also focus much more of your time and attention in that differentiated, relevant experience for your customers, and ensure that your brand is really unique and that you can stand out in that competitive space. Over the last 10 years, new technology has emerged to give retailers so much more agility and flexibility, and to evolve in the e-commerce space and to really provide that tailored experience.
That's good. Yeah, I think you and John are on the exact same train. It's time to get differentiated, and I think this is the moment to do it. Kelly, I think there's an important part of this, which is, you mentioned this earlier, you're the co-founder of Mock. How do Mock technologies contribute to the speed and flexibility and scalability of a composable platform? And as we look at this, what is Mock versus composable versus headless? I think there's a lot to unpack there, especially as we're just coming into this a little bit, and we're at the introduction part. I think it'd be good just to talk a little bit why it's important to say Mock and composable versus just headless. A lot of legacy platforms right now are claiming that they can do headless.
They can, but anyway, we as an industry are bad about naming too many things and having too many acronyms. I will take credit for that. But so composable is a great term coined by Gartner 2 years ago, and it refers to, as John mentioned, being able to compose a unique business experience for each shopper, and that's great. We need to be able to do that as an industry. It's a big evolution over the monoliths out there that just had everything in a box, and everything in a box style platforms made perfect sense 20 or 30 years ago when folks were just getting online. But now we have cloud technologies, we have REST APIs, we have a lot more maturity out there amongst the retailers and their technical teams. So we're very firmly now in the era of best of breed for specific use cases, and that's fantastic. And Mock comes in, it stands for microservices, which are small individually consumable applications that each do one thing and one thing really well. API first, and that's a key distinction there, is the API specification is built first for optimal consumption, and then the code is written as a microservice behind it. C is for cloud native multi-tenant SaaS. So that means not having to host something. It means like when you go to Slack or Gmail, you're just getting an account provisioned immediately. It works, it's there. And then finally, H is headless. And headless is the ability to decouple the front end from the back end. And you can claim to be composable, and that's fine. But I think where you have real differentiation is if you're composable backed by Mock. And that's the key there. You have to be backed by it. And if you're backed by Mock, the APIs are easier to consume. They're independently consumable, so you can incrementally adopt the solution. From a vendor side, we as vendors are constantly publishing new updates in a way that's backwards compatible. We're also able to independently release those applications. So there's no concept anymore of like a monthly or quarterly release from a vendor standpoint. Instead, updates just happen throughout the day, just naturally. So to be really composable, you do have to be Mock based. And it's something that we are seeing a lot more in the industry is native Mock vendors built from the ground up that way.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And that, I think that you called out the key point there. Like headless is something that has been happening for a long time, but headless backed by Mock technology is a much more specific solution that really is the full power of composable is achieved when you use that sort of approach. I'm sure that there are some criticisms or naysayers. Legacy solutions invest a lot of money in saying, what are maybe some of the potential challenges or limitations of adopting composable commerce? I'm going to put this out to all of you. John, why don't we start with you, and we'll kind of go down the line.
Yeah, so I mean, look, it is a maturity step, and I'll plug a little bit from a Mock Alliance perspective. We just released a maturity model on the Mock Alliance site that folks can use to really determine where they are from a maturity perspective. It is, to Kelly's point, excuse me, about the idea of a legacy solution. 10, 15 years ago, that was what organizations were ready for. That was how they were going to, the key was selling something, not necessarily differentiating. Now, as an organization, you have to be prepared to be able to think about how I'm going to approach this, how I'm going to take advantage of it, how I'm going to manage it, how I'm going to grow it going forward. So I think, some of the challenges are, I use the term all the time, evolution versus revolution. One of the big challenges is people aren't ready for a big bang anymore. And the whole idea of mock and composability is enabling you to take that evolutionary approach. I want to strangle out the platform I have. I want to take pieces of it, and where I find that low-hanging fruit to differentiate, where I find those strategic components that are going to take me to the future, that's where I want to go ahead and do it. So I think one of the first challenges from my perspective is that idea of don't try to bite off more than you can chew. Make sure that you're doing it in increments. The second is, I mentioned the maturity model. Are you mature enough to take this on? Organizationally, technology-wise, customer-wise. You might have an immature customer base that doesn't necessarily need this. Kelly and I say all the time, mock isn't the answer for everyone today. Eventually, we believe it will be. But right now, you have to be at a point to be able to take that on. So I'd say that's the second challenge, is maturity. And the third one is just understanding your customer. I think, one of the first things I say when I walk into a client is, do you have the data to understand what are your customer preferences? What are your personas? What are what are folks shopping for? What are they like and not like about your brand and your site? Go in with a good knowledge base, a good data set to be able to make these decisions. But, again, coming back to the beauty of composability is you should be able to try and fail. You should have a good data set to walk in, but that's the beauty of this. It's quick to replace. It's quick to plug in another component. You should be willing to try and fail. I tell my clients all the time, failing is just one step in the process of moving towards the future. So those are the big ones from my perspective that I'd say, Brian.
I love that, John. Actually, I'm
Coin
going to
that
follow you
term,
up.
John.
Oh, go ahead. Oh, go ahead, Kelly. Sorry.
I'm gonna have to coin that term. That's great. Failing is just one part of the process.
I love that. Yeah, no, it's so true. And actually, one of the things you said there, John, I have a follow-up question too.
Yeah.
So it almost feels like having data on your customers is one of the indicators of maturity that you need to have to make the jump. Can you give us a little bit more detail on what maturity looks like? What are the signs that you're ready to invest in a composable solution?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. And I think data is certainly one of them. I mean, the other, another is an organizational focus on enterprise technology. How when you want to create services, as Kelly was talking about the whole microservice model earlier, you want to create services that are used throughout the enterprise. That means for maturity model, your organization should have the maturity to be able to leverage those services across the enterprise. If you just develop a service and only use it in your mobile solution, that doesn't really meet the concept of what you're trying to accomplish with mock. What you want to do is establish a standard pricing service that's used in store at your POS, used online from your e-commerce site, used on your mobile solution, from all that perspective. So I think that's the second one, Brian, is the idea of an organization that's able to take that on. And I think the third area that people maybe don't think about enough from a maturity perspective is, I come back to that idea of failing. You've got to have a culture of innovation, a culture of trying things, a culture of being a leader. I think it was Gartner recently put out a study that 75% of digital leaders today are on composable architecture. There's obviously that is there is a correlation there between the two, in that I'm willing to try, I'm willing to innovate, I'm willing to be a leader in the space, knowing that not everything is going to go right. I think those are three of the big things that I look at from a maturity standpoint, beyond the having technology people, having the right skills, the kind of the bread and butter things. But if I think of bigger picture, I would say it's those.
I love that. I love that there's a cultural element. It's not just having enough budget or having the right data or having the right technology that, or the right, even the right, expertise. It's about a mindset and an understanding that, yeah, you have to fail if you want to succeed. Prasita, what are some of the challenges that you see or that can be overcome?
I guess the big thing is change is hard and change is scary. And it is very easy, and we see this a lot, to just stick with what you're doing and to trust in the technology that you have, and to feel that it is going to be time consuming and it's going to be disruptive to make these changes. And when you think about moving from a single suite to a stack of technologies, best of breed technologies, but still a number of different pieces, that can seem pretty scary to make all of those changes. But John's already pointed it out. No one is really saying you have to do it all in one go. Ultimately, if your current technology can't meet your customers where they want to be, then you either need to evolve, or your customers are going to find someone else who is able to meet them in those places. But the next piece is that you don't have to do it all in one go. John said, this is about moving forward with the areas that are of most need within your business, swapping in those pieces, checking that they work, and then assessing where you are now before you take that next step forward.
Yeah, I love that. I think the old adage, if it ain't broke, don't fix it, it's actually a very fast way to see your business fail, because
It really is. Yeah, I
change is
think you're right.
necessary. Yeah, totally. Kelly, how about you? What are some of the challenges that you see?
I see organizations that think they should do mock and are mature enough to do it, try to do it. So I see that on occasion, and I appreciate the enthusiasm. But at the same time, there is, as both have said, there's a bar that you have to clear here for technical competency and need. I think some would just be better served by taking something boring off the shelf, putting a new header on it and publishing it. Like, I do think there's a market for that. And sometimes people try to overcomplicate things. I see far more organizations, though, that should be using mock, but instead are just using an off-the-shelf solution. And there, it's a couple of things. It's perceived as safe, right? They're the incumbent. They've been there for years. They're probably solid C-level relationships between the vendor and the retailer or brand. The team knows it. It's just the default. And, again, the fastest way to get your business disrupted is not proactively making changes. And you can't just take something off the shelf and swap in your products and go live at the enterprise level and expect that to work really well. I don't think that makes a lot of sense, and that's not going to get you the competitive differentiation that you need. And e-commerce has gone from this thing off to the side that you just had, right? It used to be that, if you had 550 stores and then you started your e-commerce initiative, your e-commerce store would be store 551, right? And it would literally be treated and managed as a store. Now, e-commerce, digital commerce is how you power your business. In many cases now, we've got point of sale systems hitting that. We have kiosks, tablets. That's the primary way you take in money. So it's not just something you can outsource anymore to some vendor who gives you an in-the-box solution. It's now just part of what you do. And organizations need to understand it and make sure that they're making proactive changes to better support it.
Yeah, and let me just add one thing, Brian. Kelly's heard me say this phrase for the last probably 6 or 7 years: commerce is a commodity. I think what that means, though, people have to be careful. That doesn't mean every solution will accomplish everything you want to meet. It means that whether you choose an off-the-shelf package or you choose a composable package, there's a shopping cart, there's a product detail page, there's a promotions component. Those things are there. When I say that to clients, I want them to think about the fact of those core things that everybody does. I don't want to build myself. I want to take advantage of what's out there to do that. What I want to do is what makes me different as a retailer. When clients come and say, I love your brand, what is that? That's where you want to differentiate. That's where you want to use composability. That's, as Prasitha said, where you want to take those first steps in the journey. So, yes, commerce is a commodity when it comes to functionality, but it's absolutely not a commodity when it comes to experience. And that's the differentiator today.
Absolutely agree with that. You you can't just have your brand look like everyone else's brand. If you've got to have something that sets you apart. And in today's environment, when there's more and more entrants than ever, you need that control. If once you hit a certain state of maturity, and I think you all have done a really great job of nailing that. If you are an immature organization, maybe it's better to just rely on out of the box features, and it's much more. It puts you in a certain category, and that's cool. But if you want to actually get out there and take that next step and say, we are actually worth your attention, customer, then Composable is probably the right solution for you. Let's jump on to the next step here, which is evaluating build versus buy options. And I think this is really important. Actually flows directly out of the conversation we've already been having. And so I think the question that I have here is when retailers and brands are evaluating traditional options and considering like how to modernize their e-commerce platform, what are the advantages and limitations for building on a custom e-commerce platform versus building or just buying it off the shelf and then iterating on top of an off the shelf platform? And let's go ahead and start with you, Kelly, this time.
I think it's that used to be the dichotomy that was set up, was build or buy. I think today it's very much a build and buy. And John was referencing something I posted about the average commerce platform being in use at an organization for an average of 8.2 years. I don't even know if we can say what a platform is for too much longer anymore. And if you look at our customers, they've got commerce tools, they've got, search provider, they've got Contentstack, they've got promotions, they've got a little bit of everything from different vendors. And it's hard to even say like, yeah, they're on X platform anymore. And it ends up being just these pieces that you choose. What we like to say to our customers is, buy the boring commoditized base foundation. And by the way, John, I unapologetically stole the whole commodity thing from you, by the way. I hope you're not mad about that. But commerce is a commodity. And you buy like a shopping cart from us, right? Because there's no business value in building a shopping cart. And then you build your differentiation using somebody like a Sapient, right? Build your custom microservices, the product fitments, the stuff that makes you special, that adds value, that differentiates. So it's a build and buy these days. I think we're getting past the era of just pulling a platform off the shelf and implementing it.
I think that you're dead on. And again, that does require a level of maturity that you have to be able to say, okay, I know what I want to build. Like, it takes creativity. And so, yeah, Prasitha, what about you? What would you say, some of the traditional options are, the way that people have thought about the past, and then what are the advantages and limitations of like the custom build or versus the off the shelf build? And maybe you could flow right out of Kelly's ideas here. Maybe the future is not, this false dichotomy, but it's actually a blend of the two.
Yeah, I mean, I'm ultimately going to align with Kelly and say that blend is the best option for you. But, a lot of companies will think about building their own solutions. And, if you do build your own solution, you are going to have total control over the design and the capabilities. But this option could prove to be costly and time intensive. There are retailers who feel that they can build the technology from the ground up and ensure that by doing that will meet all of their needs for their brand. They'll retain control over the customer experience. But it will result in a lot of developer time, a lot of testing, high long-term overheads and maintenance costs. And you can often find these projects will be managed alongside a developer's day-to-day workload, and that can really result in a constant balancing act. Almost 50% of the retailers that we've surveyed in the past have said that they feel that their dependency on their IT teams has impeded their ability to deliver on online marketing. So, this is where we feel that with a composable commerce solution, you will get the best of both worlds. You don't need to compromise on the capabilities you feel that are needed for your business. You can still have that tailored experience that you want to deliver, but with a highly flexible modular solution, you can build that up from best-in-class building blocks that meet all the specific business needs, but then tailor them, bring them together with, in order to ensure that it meets exactly the business experience that you're trying to deliver.
Love that. Yeah, I think it echoes exactly what Kelly said. And I think we're hearing a theme here, which is composable commerce actually offers like the best of both worlds. And I'm expecting, John, I feel like when you answer this question, I'm going to get some similar themes. What do you have to say about this? What are some of the traditional ways of thinking about things? And then what are the advantages or disadvantages of the custom versus buy off the shelf?
Well, no, I'll be different to start it off, Brian. I'll say, I run a digital agency from a commerce perspective. I love when you want a custom build. That's great for my business. I'll be a partner for 5 years building that solution. I'm being facetious. Our role is to come in and take advantage of what's out there from a buy perspective, and then build where uniqueness comes into play. I mean, look, you look at the very top of the food chain, those top 5 or 10 retailers. They've built huge IT organizations. They're headed down that path of building. Do we really believe Amazon wouldn't be differentiated if they didn't do it themselves? I don't know. It might be an interesting debate, but that's certainly their point of view from that perspective. But then, look, there's another several hundred or thousand retailers that are doing nearly $1 billion online annually. And they don't have the means, nor the skills, nor the people to be able to go and do a custom build. So they need to take advantage of composability. They need to take those commodities, put them into their solution, find the places to differentiate. I'm not even going to go down the generative AI path here, but that's going to be the differentiation of the future. That's where I'm going to differentiate. It's not what product I put in my cart. It's not how my checkout works and what payment types I take. It's going to be that the system knows me, knows what I want, and leads me down that path. So to your question, kind of to the root question, yeah, I'm absolutely in line with what Kelly and Prasita are saying from that perspective. It is all about taking the best of both, but differentiating where you really can make your business lead the way.
John, do you mind if we take a parenthetical moment here, or AKA go down a bunny trail?
Okay.
Can you talk a little bit about how like a composable or like a mock-based solution is well positioned to start to incorporate some of those pieces of AI? You brought it up. I figured I'd just a quick follow-up question. You don't have to go into too much detail here.
Yeah, no. It's a great question, Brian. And I think, we're seeing more of it. I saw a number the other day. There are already hundreds of companies out there focused on retail and generative AI from that perspective. Because to Kelly's point, the online commerce experience is now a part of our everyday life. Whether it was pre-COVID, it certainly is post-COVID from that perspective. Everybody shops online. I mean, I use a stat from several years ago. Most people only use 5 to 9 apps on their phone to shop from. They don't shop from 50 different places. You want to be one of those from that perspective. Well, how are you going to be one of those? You're going to leverage technologies like generative AI that know your customer, that know your product. that know the weather, that know where inventory is, that bring all those pieces together to make sure when they're selling something to Prasitha, they know before she knows what she wants from that perspective. And that's going to be the trend. And that's why there's all these companies popping up from that perspective. And you're going to see some move to the forefront. You're going to see some of those join in the mock, I'm sure, in a rapid manner to make sure that they enable these capabilities for our clients.
That's good. That's good. Let me ask a follow-up question to the series we were kind of talking about there, the build versus buy discussion. So, as retailers come, it's clear, John, you made it super clear. There's like a big five of companies out there that probably should build, right? Like, or maybe they, like feel that they have the capability to build and that they want to own that, right? And then there's a whole set of others out there that used to maybe feel like they should own that build, but actually in reality, they just don't have the ability to maintain that level of technology or have the talent to be able to address it. But on the flip side, so let's go down to the buy side of things, because, and let me, play devil's advocate a little bit. The critics out there might say that, hey, actually the monolith has actually gotten cheaper over the years, and it's getting easier and easier to customize, and the front is more flexible than it ever has been. Why would someone sort of who's in that potential buy category, what are the factors that they need to consider when looking at some of the newer monoliths out there, or some of the more approachable monoliths, especially if they're a little bit budget constrained? Kelly, let's start with you.
Well, I think those all-in-one monoliths can be okay. It depends, right? If you're a big multinational and you want to sell a couple t-shirts, go Shopify. That's fine. That's perfect. I'm not going to try to pitch mock for that. But if this is your business, right? If you're selling, your gas in an B2B fashion, you probably need something a little bit more bespoke. So depending on your competency, you either start with best of breed, or you start with a more traditional and then layer on top of it pieces that better suit your business and better suit your needs.
Prasitha, what do you think about this?
Well, I think one of the other elements you need to consider is where is your market? So if you are a global brand, or you're looking to expand globally, there is a real need for central guidelines, but local flexibility. So what I mean by that, brands will want to maintain their corporate standards, their brand guidelines, but you need to take account of things that are local, like currency or language, tax, but also things like nuances of culture, tone of voice. All of these things need to play a part. And then you've also got all those challenges of sharing data and preferences around the globe, and the different restrictions for storage and usage of data in different regions. When you have all that complexity, and you're trying to think global, a lot of these homegrown solutions just struggle to balance the security and legal requirements while still maintaining localization and cultural nuance. So for a professional shopper like me, if I'm traveling around the world, will my brand recognize me when I log on to their site in another region? Will it remember my preferences? Will it maintain my loyalty status? Will it know how I prefer to navigate through the site? The legacy technologies are struggling to keep up with this. And this is where composable solutions really can play a part in maintaining that voice, maintaining that path, helping to continue my personalized experience, no matter where I am.
Prasitha, it's a great point. You bring up the idea of localization and so forth. Take it even one step further. How many folks are a house of brands now? They might own 5, 10, 20 brands, and you want to be known across all of them. Franchisees. I'm running a business where I have 1,200 separate franchisees who have their own store. They want their own experience, their own inventory, their own pricing, all of those things. From your,
Exactly.
from the way you described it very well, this is one of the big challenges of legacy platforms today, and why folks need composability is being able to handle those more complex business models. And then Kelly threw out the idea of B2B. You start talking about hierarchical organizations and contract pricing and volume discounts and all of those components from that perspective. But you want to be able to, that that customer at the end is sometimes a B2C customer, sometimes a B2B customer. You want to know which model they're in and what their persona is at that time. So, I think it comes back to the idea of how composability gives that to you. To Kelly's point, I absolutely encourage certain clients, you know what, go down a Shopify path, perfectly fine for you, because what you're trying to do, it's adjunct to your business, it's not core. But all of these models that Prasitha was describing and that Kelly was describing are places where I do need to differentiate. My business model does have some complexity to it, and composability obviously simplifies that model.
Since we're bringing up names, and I hope this is okay, but y'all brought up Shopify. There are others. I mean, Shopify is clearly like at a certain type of retailer, but there are some that are a little closer to Commerce Tools that are a little bit like more fully featured, more set up for someone that would be qualified to run mock. And so we don't have to get too far into this, but you start to look at maybe a big Commerce or an Adobe or a Salesforce that are like potentially not in the same style of composable that that Commerce Tools and plus Contentstack plus Publicis sits in. When you start to look at solutions that are a little bit more geared towards the enterprise but are still considered monolith of the past, or legacy solutions, what's sort of the differentiator when you stack up against some of those? Let's go ahead and kick it over to you, back to you, John.
Okay, sure. I'll jump in first. I view imitation as the greatest form of flattery. And what's happened in the last 2 years, the large suites have started to adopt the term composable, have started to say, we offer those same capabilities, and they do to a limited extent. I think Kelly said it best earlier. I like to say, just because you're headless doesn't mean you're composable. Just because you're composable doesn't mean you're mock. It is a stair step in your capabilities, your technology, your approach, and all those things. But those vendors out there, you mentioned like a Salesforce and an Adobe, look, they offer a great suite of solutions. For many, it comes back to what Kelly was describing. It's got to be the right fit for you. If you want to take advantage of Marketing Cloud, you want to take advantage of analytics, you want to take advantage of CDP, you want to take advantage of their commerce solution, they're absolutely great solutions for that. You have some capabilities around composability, but you don't have the full flexibility of really being, having a mock solution. You need to be able to bring those, to go fully mock, to go fully modern. You need to have that API first cloud native capabilities of being able to bring in, substitute in a service, bring in a new third-party solution and so forth. And look, I implement those solutions all the time from a Sapient perspective. And many times I tell my clients that's absolutely the right answer. But when you talk about the trend, and even these guys recognize it, the Salesforce and the Adobes, by talking about the idea of composability, is they realize that they still have monolithic features from that perspective, and they want to be part of, they want to be part of what's going on from a mock perspective, because as the analysts recognize, as our clients recognize, that's where the direction is for the future.
I love that. I think let's leave that there. I love that answer, John. I think it's a really thorough answer to the prodding I've brought here. Let's jump. I want to make sure I'm cognizant of time here. We've got about 15 minutes left, and I do want to get into some of the more practical pieces. So let's get into the best practices for implementing composable commerce. And let's just kick it off. So what are some of the key steps involved in implementing a composable solution? Let's start with you, Kelly.
It's to understand what you need to build and what you need to buy. And it's to have those two separate buckets. And once you define what you're going to buy, then you go out and work with some hopefully fantastic vendors, and you buy those commoditized pieces. And then you work with an SI, and you or you do it in-house, but you build what is differentiated. And it's really important to very clearly know what's your differentiation and build that. And if you can get something off the shelf, do that. But so many times organizations will select a vendor first, and then the vendor, they think they can use the vendor for things that they should be building themselves, or vice versa. And that becomes messy pretty quickly.
That's good advice. Prasitha, what about you? What's some of the key steps that you see involved in implementing a composable commerce solution?
Yeah, I guess I'd probably take a little step back from before where Kelly's got to and say that really the first thing you want to do is define what your goals are, so that you can really do your due diligence. Be clear if there are gaps in your current solution, be clear what they are and how they're impacting your business, how they're impacting your customer. And then really be clear what your success criteria are. It's important to think about how you can differentiate. Where do you see the biggest benefits in terms of maybe driving customer loyalty or customer retention? This is going to help you define that vision and where you want to be in the future, and avoid you replicating your current systems and processes with newer technology. Once you've got through that piece, there's tons of analyst research out there to really help you understand where digital commerce is evolving to, and review this and take stock of how that aligns to the areas of paramount importance to your business, and also bringing together that with the feedback you've had from your customers, maybe market analyst data that you have. And this is all together going to help you try and future-proof your solution and make sure you're ready for any of the new channels or markets that you want to embark on in the future. The other piece for me is really making sure that you're bringing your organization with you along on the journey. So you want to get buy-in across your organization and help them all understand why the change is important, how it's going to impact their teams and business operations, but why it's going to help you to be more successful in the future. Because ultimately, if you're going to change your technology, you should also be thinking about, are the processes you have fit for purpose? Do you need to reevaluate and evolve those too, as well as some of your team structures, so you can really streamline things and ensure that your business is really fit for the next generation and where you want to move on to?
Good advice as well, John. How much what are some pieces of advice that you have for key steps?
I think Kelly and
You do this all
Prasitha
the
did a
time.
great job. I'm so glad you hit that last point, Prasitha, because I think it comes back to the enterprise and the organization. You want to make sure from a best practices perspective, you're considering the impacts to each part of the organization. That's both positive and negative impacts. Sometimes you're going to make a decision that we're going to create this new, product information management solution that I'm going to manage product content in, and it's going to be separate from my ERP. What are the impacts of that? What are the considerations that I need to do? How am I going to make sure I keep them in sync and up to date? How am I going to enrich the content in the new PIM versus what I do in my ERP? Make sure you consider the enterprise from a practices perspective. The whole purpose of composability is getting out of a silo. Make sure you get out of those silos and you look at what are the impacts to those other components of your organization, the stores, the marketing department, the IT organization, heck, the HR department, and what they're going to have to consider about bringing in new people and the skills that they're going to have to look for. Make sure you consider the enterprise, I think, is the number one best practice.
Love that. Yeah, I think that's really wise. Making sure you understand holistically what the impact is going to be. And I think this leads into my next question really well, which is, how should retailers and brands approach the integration of different modular components in a composable commerce platform? So the integration pieces and making sure that it's all modular, like how does that work? Prasitha, why don't we start with you?
Ultimately, you want to make sure that you're focusing on the areas that are most important to your business. So, you're going to want commerce, you're going to need content, you're likely going to need search, personalization, these elements. But in order to make sure that they are going to fit together, that's where the likes of a Publicis Sapient can really help you. They have so much experience in and can talk to you about where they brought a number of different solutions together for multiple others of their customers. There will also be pre-built integrations that they or one of our software vendors may have that make it easy to connect those solutions and avoid you having to do a lot of that build work, but actually be able to do something that's more pre-configured. And also the likes of Publicis and other consultancies out there may well have accelerators or other ways that you can advance getting value from the solution quickly. So they'll know what pre-built things they can bring together so that you can get the back end kind of connected and coupled up quickly and really focus on how you want to differentiate your front end experience, how you want to really provide that dynamic new experience for your customers.
That's a really good point. And so you referenced John. I'll kick it over to you next, John. How do you think about the integration components and the modular components and how to handle those?
Yeah, and certainly Prasitha hit on the point that I was going to jump out of, the idea of that's why we build accelerators. That's why we build pre-build integration. We understand what solutions work best with each other. And bring those together. So when it comes to integration, the whole idea of Mock is it's API first. Your solutions are designed around the API. So that's where your integrations are going to take place. And therefore, they're very standard. But that being said, we like to take it to the next step for our clients and bring together a commerce tools with a content stack, with a search solution, with a DAM, with a PIM, with a promotions engine, and bring those components together and be able to walk into our clients and say, here's quote best practices. Oh, you already have a relationship with search engine Y, and this has search engine X. Well, it was built Mock, so there's no reason that you can't easily plug that in and take advantage of it. But from our perspective, it accelerates the process for our clients. It enables them to take advantage of what others are doing successfully, so they have that repeatability, but it's still built around the full API first principles of Mock, so that I want to pull one piece out and plug another one in, no problem.
I love that. Pulling pieces out and plugging another one in. That's the beauty of Mock, right? Kelly, what about you? How does this all work together?
Yeah, it's a few things. You can buy these products together in many cases through the cloud marketplaces. So there's, at least on the commercial side, it's a lot easier to buy these things in an integrated fashion from a procurement and commercial standpoint. So that's promising. Next is, as Mock vendors, we're typically publishing our data to pub/sub queues, which is the way you exchange data within a cloud. So the back and forth of updating products or inventory or prices, that is beyond trivial to do these days, technically. Also, commercial vendors, we all, as ISVs, have integrations to all of our key partners. We've had a Contentstack integration since, 2016? Something crazy like that. And it keeps getting better. And finally, generative AI makes it really, really, really easy to integrate stuff. So you can today go to ChatGPT, use the premium GPT-4 version, and say, write code that integrates commerce tools and Contentstack, and it will do it perfectly every single time. It's flawless. And you can copy and paste and run the code. So I think it's going to be even easier. There's going to be a magic AI layer, a translation layer, that'll just magically connect all of these things together, which is pretty exciting.
That's wild. That's really exciting. And John, let's swing back around to you here. I think, looking at this, the modularization of commerce, and maybe we'll have AI that can just perfectly create snippets. As you think about managing and optimizing your your composable commerce solution over time, how is that best accomplished? I think you've said multiple times now on this webinar that the beauty of this is iterative thinking. What are some of the ways that brands and retailers can really apply that iterative thinking in the context of this new modular world?
Yeah, no, look, you've got to be able to think this out when you design it going forward. I mean, one of the first examples in the world of going to a microservices technology was Netflix. In fact, that Netflix architecture is still used in many places. But what happened? They ended up going down a path where they had tens of thousands of microservices. It reached a point where it was essentially unmanageable. And the reaction was to swing the pendulum all the way to the other side and go back to a monolith. That's why you've got to think this out in advance. That's why you take advantage of buy where you can and bring in components that are proven, that make sense, that integrate into that. So when you're thinking about this and you're thinking about strategically how I'm going to implement this, it still comes back to me to the core things. Buy where practical, build to differentiate, and don't add to a layer of complexity so that you'll have so many services they become challenging to manage. But there's the other side too. That doesn't mean don't go build 5 services and everything in your entire system runs in those 5 services. That's not a microservice anymore at that point. That's going to require full regression testing and everything else. So I not being wishy-washy with my answer, but you got to find that sweet spot. What is the sweet spot for you as an organization? What are the buy components? What are the build things that are going to differentiate? And what's the level of granularity that I'm going to build those services for those differentiating components? If you do all that right, you're going to be in good shape. My quick soapbox, that's why you go hire a partner who's done this many times before. You bring in a digital transformation partner, an SI, an agency who knows how to do these things and has done it many times. That's where we come into play, taking advantage of those things that are provided by the content stacks and the commerce tools to really enable that strategic design of the solution that'll be successful.
Love that. Or in our last minute here, just quick hits. Who are some good examples of brands or retailers that have implemented composable solutions and have done it well? So John, maybe just one from each of you kind of down the line. John, you first.
I mean, one of the ones I'm most proud of that we've done is Bang & Olufsen. Great customer experience, very compelling, engaging brand that's, a high-end brand. And they've gone fully composable from that perspective. And we help them do that.
Prasitha.
I'd probably talk about Photobox. So they're a European retailer with 30 million customers in 19 countries. They'd really struggled with their error-prone in-house legacy system and wanted a solution that would support web and mobile channels, and have made that move to composable. And they feel it's future-proofing their business as they want to explore new channels in the future, which their legacy system just couldn't support.
And Kelly?
I'm always a fan of Lego. I used the Lego analogy for years, and then we were thankful to sign them up as a customer. And I think they're example of just powering through the replacement of their legacy, and now they are super composable, and it powers all the in-store experiences, the online, the mobile. They're just a great brand that's done mock and composable correct.
Love it. That's a great place to end it. Again, go download the white paper. You heard a lot of great detail here. That white paper provides even more. Scan this QR code. Check it out. Thank you again to our panelists, John, Kelly, Prasitha. All of your wisdom was incredible. And thank you again to Contentstack, Publicis Sapient, and Commerce Tools for bringing this information to us. And I think that's it for today.
Thanks, Brian.
Thanks, Brian.
Thanks.
Great job.